We are joined tonight by a true cinematic legend, Mr. Mark Damon. He's been called the godfather of independent film and the pioneer of international film financing and the foreign motion picture sales market. As a young actor, he studied under Meisner, befriended talents like Natalie Wood, Robert Towne, and Jack Nicholson, and even won a Golden Globe Award for Most Promising Newcomer in 1961. Through his company, Producer Sales Organization, he played a major role in shaping the voice of American independent film, and most profoundly, in how those films are received throughout the world. His roster of astounding producing credits from this period include Das Boot, The Never-Ending Story, 9.5 Weeks, Short Circuit, Flight of the Navigator, and The Lost Boys. And in recent years, he's produced or executive produced many more terrific films like The Upside of Anger and the Oscar-winning Monster. And that doesn't even scratch the surface of the many classic and at times infamous projects for which he's played an indelible role in bringing to the screen, from The Cotton Club to Once Upon a Time in America. In The Cowboy, the Mogul, and the Monster, the never-ending story of Mark Damon, author Linda Schreyer chronicles this remarkable life with stunning clarity, candor, and compassion. Painstakingly developed over the course of 5 years, her book conveys the scope of this grand and multifaceted life in a gorgeously constructed narrative that's sure to delight and inspire even the most casual of film fans. It is a tremendous pleasure to welcome Mr. Mark Damon and Ms. Linda Schreyer to Movie Geeks United. Mr. Damon, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Mr. David, hello. Thanks so much. Let me see if I can bring
Thank you. The book sounds great. I'd love to buy
one. Ms. Schreyer, are you with us?
I am. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us tonight.
I just have one question, Jamie. You got the book yesterday and you read the whole thing in one day? You are incredible.
I could not put it down. I mean, first of all, literally I could not put it down because I had to finish it yesterday. But it is a fantastic book about such an extraordinary life that is still so vital today as it ever has been, and I can't wait to delve into this amazing life with you. But first of all, let me ask how this book got started. And I'll start with you, Linda. I know you're a very successful screenwriter and writer of some very popular episodic television. You've even written a stage musical, and I want to ask you about that a little later. But tell me how you came to meet Mr. Damon and how this book got started for you.
Well, I actually met Mark through his wife, Maggie. And Maggie and I were close friends for a number of years. And one morning, about a little more than 5 years ago, we were having coffee. And I had been teaching memoir writing for a number of years. And I said I was ready to write someone else's story instead of just teaching other people how to write their own. And Maggie said, well, then you have to write Mark's. And so that's how it came about.
Wow.
Well, not quite. I mean, you had to meet me first. You had to meet me first, and you had to talk to me about it. And I was very busy, and I really didn't have time to do anything like this. And I said, "Well, how long will this take?" And Linda said, 6 months. I'm fast. So 5 years later, we finally got it published.
Yeah, and it was quite a feat here in a period of 5 years. And I would think that over that time, the relationship between a biographer and her subject would have to develop into something pretty intimate because you're sharing.
I can't talk about that. My wife.
But I'm wondering, Mr. David, was this a difficult experience in some ways, and was it ultimately cathartic for you?
I think cathartic is really a good word, because as I recounted my life to Linda, and she began to point out to me why I did what I did and at what point, by pointing out that this might have happened when your mother told you this at the age of 7, and that's why you did this when you were 32, and so it was more than catharsis. It was like a total psychoanalysis. It was an extraordinary experience. But I had to have someone extraordinary to point it out to me, which was Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the book is written. It's so unique and almost cinematic in a way. It's written in a kind of nonlinear style, and I'm wondering what the thinking behind that structure was, Linda.
You know, it's so interesting. I started out writing it chronologically, and Mark was the first one to point out to me that people were not going to want to read about his taking a bus out to Los Angeles at the age of 13 on page 60. And I realized he was right. And so then I thought, well, what if I cut back and forth as a film would, and having written films and studied films, I thought, why don't I just do this? And I never thought that anyone would be able to follow it. I thought people were going to hate that, and it was the worst thing I had done. And Mark continuously reassured me that it was going to be fine, just fine. So it's really great to hear that you enjoy that part of it, because it kept me always interested. And as you said, this is a life that's so grand and has so many different aspects to it that I just wanted to make sure to tell it in hopefully somewhat as interesting a manner in which it's been lived. And just to stay true to that. Yeah,
what an amazing life. And I want to discuss your life. We don't have a 4 or 5 hour show tonight, so we'll have to cram this in as quickly as possible. But I know, Mr. Damon, that you started out as an actor, and eventually, in your young career, you studied under Sanford Meisner. And I'm wondering what that experience did for you, what you got from Mr. Meisner.
Well, it was devastating initially, because I came to New York and studied at the neighborhood playhouse after I'd been acting in Hollywood for about 4 or 5 years. And one day, a friend of mine who was a member of the Actors Studio told me that I would never make it as an actor if I didn't give up all the Hollywood nonsense and dig in and learn what acting was really about. And so she convinced me. She and another actor friend of mine, Pepe Schildkraut, convinced me to go to Sandy and study. Yeah. And Sandy had a lot of fun with me. I was the young Hollywood teen idol who was trying to show that he was serious, and he castigated me and continued to make me feel like there was no place for myself in the acting world. And he did that on purpose, because what he wanted to do is he wanted you to get down to basics, to get rid of all the nonsense, to get rid of all the posing, and really act.
Right.
And it took me, I would say, almost a year before Sandy ever said anything nice about me. But at the end of 2 years, when I graduated from the neighborhood playhouse, he asked me if I would teach his method in Los Angeles. And so I became an acting teacher for a while, and that, of course, was the greatest compliment he could have given me, to ask me to teach his method to others.
Had you considered a career in acting early in your life? I know one of the great juicy anecdotes in this book, it seems like the first person that really opened your eyes to the possibility of acting in motion pictures was Groucho Marx, of all people. Had you considered a career in acting prior to that?
No, not really. But when he came up to me and he said, you could be an actor, you have the face for it. So I thought, listen, I was 16 years old, I needed money. I figured being a movie star would make me a lot of money, so why not? And so he introduced me to his brother, who was an agent, Gummo. And Gummo said, well, you should go study. And I didn't really have the time nor the desire to study something. I just thought it should be handed to me on a silver platter, so to speak. And but then I finally did. I tried out for something at the Pasadena Playhouse, and I failed miserably, and so I just gave it up until later in my college career. Which, since you read the book, you know what I'm about to say, but I understand that others might not, so I'll continue to talk about it.
Please.
I had been a straight-A student. I prided myself in my scholastic abilities, and it was really more competitive than my caring to learn. I just wanted to be better than everybody else.
Right.
So when I was in college, somebody said, why don't you try and take an acting class? And so that suddenly stirred memories of Groucho Marx and becoming a movie star. So I took an acting class, and I was awful. I got the first C I had ever gotten in my entire high school and college career. And years and years afterwards, I continued to have nightmares about the fact that I had gotten that C. And so I think what really motivated me to get into acting was to prove to my teacher and the other students that I was really an A student in whatever I did. I can't say this was the whole reason for it, but I mean, this was certainly gave me an impetus to do much better and the only thing that I had failed at in my scholastic career up to that point.
Right. And it's fascinating to me. I read an incident that you had on stage where something that occurred on stage made you laugh, and it was completely not conducive to the moment you were trying to create, but you turned that laughter into tears. And it kind of illuminated for me, making parallels between acting and your very successful sales career and producing career. Some of these parallels between those two disciplines. And because as an actor you study, and then you kind of let go of that so you can exist in the moment. And then I read about some of your deals that you've made, and you study, and you come to the table, and you can exist in the moment depending upon the attitude and the approach of the person you're negotiating with. I'm wondering how you see acting in terms of how it helps you in your career later on.
Well, it certainly helped me in my career as a seller of motion pictures. Mm-hmm. Most salesmen who I knew at the time, when I talk about a film salesman, it means that somebody who is trying to license rights to a film to potential distributors.
Right.
And I saw some of my peers, and they didn't really know how to pitch a project. What they would do is they would simply give a very quick, boring synopsis of it and then say, okay, I want $100,000. What do you offer for me? And because I had been an actor, what I would do is I would act out scenes for the buyer, and they would then be able to see in their minds what this might look like up on screen. And if I could move them, or if I could involve them in the project, or the motion picture script that I was trying to peddle them, then they became an easy sale. And so my acting helped that out because I simply acted all the roles as I was recounting some scenes from any of the projects. I remember one in particular was a picture called Misunderstood, which Jerry Schatzberg directed with Gene Hackman starring.
Yes, sir.
I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
It was originally from an Italian film called Incompreso, which was one of the biggest tearjerkers of all time. And there's a certain point where the son says to his father just before he dies, all I wanted you to say to me was you love me. I can hardly get it out now. I mean, it was such an emotional moment. And so as I would pitch the project to buyers, I would start to cry.
Yeah.
I couldn't help myself. And I remember sitting with some Japanese buyers, and when we got to that moment where I had to say, all I wanted you to say was you love me, I just started to bawl. And the Japanese buyers came up, and they tapped me on the shoulder, and they say, Mark, you don't have to cry about it. We'll buy the film at your price.
Yeah. And that account is actually in the book as well.
I think so.
Well, you really did read that book.
Oh, I read every word. I clung to every word of this book. But you have to, that brings up a good point, to be a successful producer and a international sales figure, you really have to believe in and be passionate about these films, don't you?
I can't sell a film if I'm not passionate about it.
Yeah.
Every script I pick up that I want to make, I become passionate, and that becomes the most important film of my life. People always say, well, what were your favorite films? My favorite film is the film I'm doing today, basically. And, you talk about producers. Sometimes people just attach themselves to a script and they contractually get producer credit. But a true producer has to have so many talents. And you asked about what acting had done for me in my subsequent career. Well, it allowed me to understand how to talk to actors, because I was an actor, how to talk to directors, how to deal with script writers, how to attract the right cast and the right director, and then following the process not just through the development of the script, but all the way through the motion picture production, and then sitting as an editor and cutting the picture together and knowing enough about music so that because I think really that in motion pictures, music is 80% of the success of a film. And if you don't quite get that right, and then I'll tell you a story in a second, you may lose the entire film. So a producer has to be a man of so many talents to really be successful. And then he also has to understand marketing because once your picture is finished, if it isn't marketed properly, and you can't always depend upon other people, if you don't guide them in the way the picture should be fashioned for the audience or the demographic that you're going after. So it is really a difficult profession. There are very few producers who really are accomplished. I wanted to go back for just 1 second because it's one of my favorite stories when I talk about the importance of music in a film. We had made a film some years ago called The Never-Ending Story, which I think today has become quite a classic.
Absolutely.
And when I saw the final cut of the movie with music from a German composer, and I was in Munich at the time with Wolfgang Petersen, who directed it, I said, we're going to have to replace the music. And Wolfgang became furious with me because this composer, whose name was Klaus Doldinger, had done a magnificent score for Wolfgang's previous picture, which was that famous film about German sailors and submarine personnel, Das Boot. And the music, as I say, was great, but the music on this particular film, which is kind of a fairy tale, did not work. And so, to prove my point, I hired a composer who lived in America, Giorgio Moroder, and he did a completely different, lighter, more fun score. We had tested the picture with the original composer's score, the German composer, to audiences who basically only 1 out of 5 liked the movie. And when we put in a different score in exactly the same picture, we didn't change the frame of the picture, but a new score, and 85% of the people loved the movie. So that was one of my best examples of just how important a musical score is for a film.
And this really illustrates how hands-on you are as a producer, whether it's the English dubbing of Das Boot or the music of The Never-Ending Story. In the book you say if a producer doesn't tend to every detail and make sure the picture is the best it can be, he doesn't deserve to call himself a producer. And two things interest me about this. One is, I think good producers are a unique breed in that they have their creative side, and then they understand the global kind of financial implications of the creative decisions they make. I'm wondering if those two ever butt heads, and I'm also wondering about the relationship with the director, and I'm sure that a lot of them found this very intrusive, this involvement.
To say the least. But what are the two factors that you said might butt heads? The commercial and the artistic? Is that what you're saying?
The creative side and the financial side, yes, sir. Because I'm thinking that what works for a film creatively, does that ever run counter to its marketability throughout the world?
It should not.
Yeah.
Meaning this, when you say creatively, it depends who has the correct creative vision. If one chooses a script and has a particular vision of it, that vision carries through to what you hope is going to be the commercial success of the picture. If you then have your actors or your director who argue your vision, and if their take is wrong, at least in your mind, because you as the producer are the creative guide to the entire process, then the picture can go off track. And that's happened to me a number of times. But no, the correct creative vision, whatever that is, the one that most appeals to the public, and the commercial success of the film should be absolutely unified. Mm-hmm. What a producer has to do is this: he has to listen carefully to everybody who talks to him. He has to know what he wants, but he has to be able to change or to modify if something makes more sense to him. But he's the guide. He's the one that the director and the editors and everyone else has to listen to. And I remember in the picture Monster that we did, which was maybe the most critically acclaimed of all the films I've made.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I continue to remind my director and the editor was the importance of making certain that we walked a very, very fine line. I said, if the audience, if we try to make the audience sympathize with our lead character, who was a serial killer, I said they're going to reject it.
Yeah. We
must make certain that we allow them to empathize, to feel what she's going through, but not to espouse it, not to say it's okay. And that was a very, very fine line that we continued to remind ourselves again and again and again. And if we'd gone off by 5% either way, the picture would not have been a success. So
right.
That's the importance of a producer, is to make certain that everybody remembers what you started out to do and make certain that the end product is close to that.
Yeah. Linda, when you're listening to all of Mark's amazing stories, from the anecdotes like introducing Clint Eastwood to Sergio Leone, and his involvement with the Cotton Club and his revolutionary company PSO, it has to be quite a daunting task to write this book. And I'm wondering, what frightened you most about this project?
Me.
Everything frightened me most about this project. To start off, I had never written a biography, so that was plenty scary.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, how do you write a book about a man who's lived so many lives? And how do you do justice to them all? So that required an extraordinary amount of research on my part. And basically, every time I started a new chapter, I was afraid that I didn't know how to do it. And the most important thing that I was afraid of was that I thought I'd never finish it. And I literally thought on my tombstone they would say...
Wait, you're telling me all this now?
So
that's pretty frightening. I put myself in your hands and you weren't sure?
There was nothing about it that was not daunting. However, everything about it was so interesting. And as you can hear, as I listen to Mark now, I'm thinking, gosh, I wish I'd had that particular quote down. When you get, it's like hitting gold, If you're mining and you hit gold with a vein that's this deep, you sort of can do no wrong. And after a while, I realized that. So, it was daunting, and it was thrilling, and it still is.
Yeah. Mr. Damon, I want to ask you about one film in particular.
Don't call me Mr. Damon. Call me
Sir,
or Your Highness, or...
Sir Damon.
Emperor.
Emperor, that's better.
Right. This is a film that I've always loved, and as I've matured, the meaning of the film has matured for me. And I know you have mixed feelings about it, and that's 9.5 weeks. And I'm reading this chapter on the production of this film was of particular interest to me, and I'm wondering if you can give our audience just a taste of how problematic that shoot was, and what your thoughts on that film are today.
Well, I don't have mixed feelings about the end product. The only one I thought maybe we could have made a film that was slightly more erotic, but then maybe it would not have carried the same impact if we had gone a little overboard on the eroticism. I think people today say the film is highly erotic and set the sexual standards for the world in the 80s, and so who am I to argue with what feels like a great success? I don't think any director or producer is ever 100% happy with a film, and you're right, it's the test of time. People who see that film today do not feel it's dated, which I think is great. The problem is guiding everyone to the finish line.
Right.
And we had a particularly difficult problem because we had two actors who absolutely hated each other, and yet they come off on screen as the most romantic love story ever told. Mickey was absolutely frightening in how he handled Kim Basinger. I'm talking about Mickey Rourke.
Yes.
And she was so frightened of him and eventually of the role she was playing that I often would have to go into her trailer in the morning and sit with her for a couple of hours while she was coiled in the fetal position saying, I can't, please don't make me, I can't come out, I can't act, I can't do it. And finally I would coddle her and tell her how great she was, and she really was great in the movie. And then try both of us to face Mickey and also a director, Adrian Lyne, who was kind of supporting Mickey in the way he was handling Kim, because he thought that they were really getting to her and getting the kind of performance that was needed. But there are ways to do it, and I thought that if I ever got through this film, I would like to kill Mickey Rourke afterwards, and I've had that feeling for the last 30 years, I think. He was very difficult and impossible, to say the least, to work with. But at any rate, doesn't matter what happens behind the scenes, and those are always fun things to talk about afterwards. All that matters is what's on the screen. We in that movie, and I don't recall whether I wrote this or not, but Mickey Rourke had a totally odd idea of what his character should be. And when we first put the picture together and saw the 4-hour and 40-minute cut, Mickey came off so badly. He was a sicko. He was absolutely unappealing. And when we first screened the picture for audiences, they hated it. They would throw things at it. In motion picture research screenings, in order to know that you have a successful picture, you should have 80% or more of the audience who say the picture is excellent or very good. Well, we had maybe 7% of the audience who said it was excellent or very good, and about 80% who said they absolutely hated it. And that was because of Mickey's performance. Mickey saw his role in a certain way and was intent on coming across that way as this psychopath, which worked totally against the movie because you want to love him because he loves her. And so we reconstructed his performance frame by frame. We would take moments, for example, after Adrian Lyne would say cut and Mickey would giggle, we would grab that and put a little giggle somewhere. Where he would smile because he thought the camera wasn't on him, we would pick that up. We restructured his performance totally. And when he saw the movie, I'm sure he didn't recognize himself at all in it because he was lovable. And Mickey Rourke is not. But my point is that a movie is made not just in the shooting of it, but in the structuring it afterwards. Yeah. And then with the music and everything else and so. But it's a film that I look at today and I love. Just recording as I watch it all the agonies that I went through at the time, but saying it was worth it. And, an example of how people never, ever know whether a picture is going to be successful. When that picture was finished, I had our French distributor come up to me and say, it's awful. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And I said to him, Philippe, his name was Philippe Hellman, I said, how can you say that? You haven't shown it to audiences yet. They will hate it. I said, Philippe, you have to try. He says, I will try, but they will hate it. And so he released 9.5 weeks in Paris, and 4.5 years later, that film was still playing in cinemas in Paris, the longest playing film in the history of French cinema, or of France, in essence. So what I'm saying is you never know. You can never really be sure until that film is put on screens and audiences are loving it or hating it.
Yeah. It's an astounding movie for me. We're just scratching the surface of your contribution to cinema, but I just have a couple of quick questions to close off with. Mm-hmm. You guys have been so generous with your time. I wanted to know your take on the new media and the future of the motion picture experience. We've talked to many filmmakers from Paul Schrader on about this subject. Where do you think that's going?
Well, when you say new media, exactly what do you mean?
Well, we're talking about the internet and even short films for cell phones and the experience of actually going to the movies kind of dying out with the exception of event pictures. Seems to be the common consensus amongst many people.
Well, I think there's no question that's the way it's going. I question how successful it might be for someone to view a movie in 3-minute segments on their cell phone and whether or not the experience could ever possibly be as enveloping as a motion picture experience should be. But on the other hand, if that's how they take it, if that's how they want to see it, and if they continue to contribute revenues to a film, I'm not sure that's the way it should go, but that seems the way it will be going. So, the fact is, today nobody really knows. It seems to be going in that direction, but no one knows if motion pictures will ever be as successful as they should be watching it in that way. But one thing that I do know for sure, no matter what the medium is that a film is eventually released in or exploited through, content is always king. Mm-hmm. And good movies, no matter how they are exhibited, will be good movies. And if they're bad movies, they will be bad movies no matter if you look at it in 3-minute segments in mobisodes or on your cell phone or whatever.
Yeah, it's all about the need for storytelling in whatever medium, I think. Linda, looking at this book, and what do you want readers to come away with? What's the essence of this man and this life that you want readers to come away with?
I think that what inspires me most about Mark is his willingness to keep trying new things, looking at the world in new ways, never giving up. And I think that's very inspiring at a time when people are looking at multiple careers and so on. I think Mark is I think you put your finger on it so well, talking about the incident when he was young and, turning his laughter on stage into tears. I think that Mark is always willing to be in the moment and to shift accordingly. And I think that that's a great lesson for people. So I would have to say that's what I would like people to take away.
I would like to add something objectively, if I can. And I'm not sure which version of the book you saw, Jamie, but we had a later version where I put a little quote in front which hit me one day in the shower, and that was, if you don't succeed in the field of your dreams, you may yet succeed in the field you've never dreamed of. And that, for me, is one of the reasons that I agreed to put the book down, because so many actors came to me and said, it looks like I'm not going to be successful. It's not going to really work for me, this career. And to see that you changed careers, having been a devoted actor for 20 years of your life, started a whole new career, and succeeded in it in a way that no one else had, gave them confidence or gave them hopes, if you will, that maybe not succeeding as an actor didn't mean the end of their lives, but they could find something else just as fulfilling or maybe even more fulfilling. And I think, again, trying to distance myself from my life, which is impossible, but trying to do so and looking at what others told me was the reason for writing this book. And so I'm hopeful that it could prove inspirational for so many people who can see that you can still control your destiny if you're only open to change.
Yeah, and you fought for and you've lived your passion and your dreams, and you continue to do that today. I know that you're producing the upcoming Peter Hyams film and Bruce Willis's directorial debut. You still got your hand in the fire. You're still, that passion hasn't waned for the business, has it?
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Thank
and
God.
Linda, you have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said, thank God it hasn't, because once my passion wanes, I wane, and I don't want to wane.
Linda, tell me a little bit about this upcoming project for you, your stage musical. It's based on your life or your childhood, or?
No, it's actually based on my mother's life, and it's called The Goldsmith's Daughter, and it's actually the story of my family. My mother was a goldsmith in Vienna at the turn of the century, following in her father's footsteps, and it's a saga. It's one I've worked on for a long time. My career as a composer sort of waned as my career as a writer began, and now I'd like to put them back together. So it's in process.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with that.
I want to add just one thing, Jamie, before we're off.
Yes, sir.
Talking about waning. One of the real reasons for my success has been a devoted wife who has been with me for 35 years, And if it were not for her support and her encouragement and her love, I never could have accomplished what I did. It's my wife, Maggie, who I discovered as a young actress and made her become something much more.
Yeah.
A mother, a wife, my woman, and I think it's so important for so many people's success to have a mate like I have, and I just wanted to pay tribute to her.
And that is absolutely one of the most moving portraits in this book. It is such a beautiful, lasting relationship that you have, and I understand from reading the book that has to mean the world to you. And I thank you both for joining us tonight, Linda and Emperor Damon.
Very good.
Right way to go, yeah.
Yes. You both are welcome back on the show anytime you'd like in the future. It's been an honor.
You've been great. Thank you.
We need you back.
You.
There's so much more to talk about.
That's true.
Thank
you
very
both.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.